Hi and welcome back to MrG Coaching. I'm Chris, aka Mr. G. It's good to see you again. In this part 2 to my intro to MrG Coaching, I'd like to talk about the title that I gave this video. Why working with teens and young adults is not a waste of time. One of the problems that we all get to face in life along the way is that when we have an idea or we present a plan, there are those people who are going to want to get up in your face and say, no, that's not a good idea. Now, while dealing with evaluating your ideas and dealing with negative people will definitely be topics I talk about in future videos, in this particular case, I'd like to talk about it with regards to MrG Coaching and working with teens and young adults. Over the years, I would say that I developed a pretty thick skin when it came to dealing with negative and difficult people. But on 2 occasions, when I got to hear that MrG Coaching and working with teens and young adults was not a good business plan and that I could be doing more with my skills, I have to admit it hit kind of hard and it slowed me down, at least for a little bit. Now, one of those people is a person I knew quite well and I actually respect. The second is a so-called business guru who made this statement very publicly while dancing around behaving or imitating how he believed the younger generation behaved today. Fortunately for me, it was one of the people working for the business guru who reminded me of a lesson I'd already learned. Something that I already knew. I just needed to activate it again. And that was, very often, when people step up to you quickly and say no, it's because they don't know enough. And it's your job to give them the knowledge that they need. So what I'd like to do is pass some of that knowledge on in this video. Let me share some of the skeptical statements that I've heard. Number 1, they, meaning Generation Y1 or the young millennials and Generation Z, simply don't know much about life and the world. And I should simply wait until they're older and more established so that there is good work to be done. I know, ignorant on quite a few levels. First of all, they, or those 30 and younger, make up around half of the world's almost 8 billion people. We cannot even begin to imagine what these young people have experienced already in their lives, what they know, what they access, especially in this day and age. Then, in some parts of the world, they leave school quite early to already shoulder the responsibilities of an adult, whether for themselves or their families, whether it's because they have to or they want to. In other parts of the world, adulthood, or the process of becoming adult, has drawn out over a much longer period of time to the point that psychologists now talk about emerging adulthood. If you add to this their individual personalities, their family life, the societies, the regions and the cultures that they grow up in, there is simply so much work to be done. 2 more comments to this statement. First, the work of MrG Coaching is to unlock in young people their potential and to show them what they can do with it. And for this, it's important that everybody understands that potential lives in the person, not in the age. Let me repeat that. Potential lives in the person and not in the age. Therefore, you don't have to wait to start unlocking it. And the second comment, growth is based on a willingness to learn. And don't get me wrong, but this is a trait that I have seen in so many young people, often more so than in, well, you know. Statement 2 is actually more of a question that I often get asked. Why don't you just keep working with top leaders and managers? After all, they're the ones in charge of the here and now, and they usually don't have to delve too deep or want to delve too deep into the personal and emotional stuff. Well, the answer is really clear. I get to work with top leaders and managers, but now in the scope of Mr. G's coaching vision and mission. Let me explain. Many of the top leaders and managers that I've met know and understand that personal growth and professional growth, especially leadership growth, go hand in hand. And they don't avoid either, and in fact will go out of their way to gather experiences in both the personal and the professional sphere. On top of that, they want those following in their leadership footsteps to know and understand that connection between personal growth and professional growth. Generations Y1 and Z now make up a massive portion of the global workforce. And in many workplaces, there are shifts going on to account for the generational differences. Within this sphere, there are a huge number of young, top and middle level leaders. And with Mr. G Coaching and Training, I get to provide a way to bridge that gap between age and experience. Some of the most valuable conversations that I've had, mentor coaching that I've done, training that I've organized, has been for colleagues working with me and colleagues working for me. I've really enjoyed giving young, aspiring leaders the chance to lead their own teams. Why? Especially because of their lack of experience. Why give them that opportunity? Well, because having worked with them, I got to see that there was a real willingness and capacity to grow and learn. And this is hugely exciting, especially for the future of an organization. And with Mr. G Coaching and Training, I get to, number one, bridge the gap between personal and professional growth and help all of these young, aspiring leaders to make more of their potential. And two, I got to minimize the potential disruption that they would cause through their youthful exuberance, let's say. So all in all, my response to this question is I will get to work with many top leaders and managers. The difference being is that they will be the young, aspiring top leaders and managers. With Mr. G Coaching, I look forward to meeting many of you. Number 3, Chris, you're being silly. You're changing directions in life and starting something new when you have a perfectly good and successful career in education. I think when they say that, by silly they mean crazy, and by successful they mean safe. But who's getting out of education? I think we can agree that me educating people is what I do. In fact, all that I see myself doing here is creating a new job to go along with my career, shifting focus slightly, learning lots of new things and having a lot of fun doing it. Behind all of it though, of course, there is a more powerful and meaningful reason for my actions in starting Mr. G Coaching. There's a need that I see, in fact I've seen it for a while, that I would really like to do something about. Working in education from the age of 21 and now for just over 30 years, all the young people that I have had the pleasure of working with are spread across 3 generations all over the globe and doing all sorts of fascinating things with their lives. But when they all finished school, many of them stayed in touch, or at some point, especially during their 20s, touched base to say hello, share some details about what they were doing, and invariably to ask for advice, some sort of solution or guidance with regards to something that they had to deal with or something that they wanted to do in their life. There comes that point in time for a young person that the steps and parts of adulthood are right there in front of them. In fact, so close they can reach them and they really want to go there. The only thing is, they have to let go of the safety and security of school and the shrinking security sometimes of home. Now, for the most part, that can feel quite normal and actually a lot of fun. However, with all the things that young people encounter in their first 5 to 10 years after school, a number of these steps and parts can be confusing, disorienting, and definitely a little scary. Now, MrG Coaching is about providing a roadmap, a guide, so to speak, a way of accompanying them and supporting them on their journey across all areas of their life. Doing this by providing the mentoring, coaching, training, knowledge, tips and tricks, inspiration, empowerment, motivation, a network, connections, anything to help them feel like they are not walking this path alone, especially when it's difficult. MrG Coaching is also about reminding them of that one thing that is central to their entire life, the one element that they can do the most with themselves. And the final statement, there is no business to be made in working with teens and young adults. Clearly, those making this statement have no experience in the education and the training sector. Projections indicate that global education and training expenditure will reach approximately $10 trillion by 2030. Sounds like an opportunity to me. And ultimately, I subscribe to the belief that you really do aim to do what you love. You strive to be the best at it. You remember to monetize what it is that you do. And it's always possible to go big or go home. So why isn't it a waste of time working with teens and young adults? Well, we spend a lot of time and money and energy preparing our young people for life after school. And to many people that means life after school is being an adult. But the truth of the matter is, nowadays, that's just the phase of an emerging adult. In fact, what we have here is a need and an obligation to provide emerging adults with the kind of support that will help them to make the first 10 years after school really count in setting up their lives. On top of that, half the world's population being 30 and under, generations Y1 and Z making up a large part of the workforce and growing, and many decisions around the world now in the hands of young leaders, I ask you, which better group is there to actually work with? I'm Mr. G, this is MrG Coaching. Please subscribe, connect, comment, feel free to ask questions. I'll see you again soon. Bye.